Welcome to Advanced TV Herstory, the podcast that's been connecting the dots of TV women and feminism to American history and culture for more than 6 years. Find Advanced TV Herstory on most podcast apps, YouTube, Spotify, and Pandora, and head to tvherstory.com for ways to connect and follow this independent podcast. This is a two-part episode, an interview with author, poet, and professor Shayla Lawson, and it's about her book from 2020, This is Major, Notes on Diana Ross, Dark Girls, and Being Dope. Welcome to part 2. I discovered this book when doing additional research on a topic near and dear to my heart. Diana Ross's 1983 concert in Central Park. I knew immediately from reading Shayla's thoughts about Diana and the concert that I had to invite her on. This concert is as relevant today as it was in 2015, when I produced the first podcast episode dedicated to this major moment in TV herstory. So yes, stay tuned for a chat about leadership, authenticity, and the importance of being well prepared, as well as Jim Crow laws and how they affected Diana Ross's career, hair and makeup for Black women, and the sheer longevity of Diana Ross. Shayla brings her own perspective and more, fresh from her 2020 book of essays, This is Major. Listeners, enjoy. A little bit more backstory that we are able to glean from the DVD, the Steve Binder commentary, the guy who directed it, is that he said that in the 3.5 months that they were actually really preparing the logistics and all of the components and testing out what the stage was going to look like, the design and everything, that there were numerous times where people said, hey, it's summer, it's New York, the chances of rain are not slim. We should have some sort of a covering over the stage. And repeatedly, evidently, Diana was like, nope, there's not going to be any covering over the stage. Mm-hmm. So she knew going in that she needed to really prepare for anything. And that's Absolutely. The cool part. Yep. You could say maybe there were a number of different even jumpsuits or costumes. Yep. Had it been just 100 degrees and not rainy, I don't know that she would have picked that orange jumpsuit that literally went down to her ankles, long sleeve, and it's going to be hot in New York. You don't do that.
No, I think those were all pieces of careful planning. It felt like she had worked out her contingency plan of, okay, what is all of this going to look like if we have to consider weather? Because it would have been such a different show if she had to cover the stage. I mean, there would have been no need for the two jumbotrons because we wouldn't be able to see anything.
Right. And so, and then the other part that I find to just be this essence of both, we have to remember what 1983 was like for people who were adults in 1983, is that she did not have any sort of an earpiece or any connection to anybody. Yeah. So what were you thinking when Barry Diller has to go out on the stage? He is soaked to his skin and he's a big dude. I mean, he's now the CEO of Expedia and he's Mr. Diane von Furstenberg, for Pete's sake. But that day he was the producer. And what were you thinking? Because I think about that all the time.
It felt like such a humbling moment. It felt like family. I think what I love about that moment is, especially right now, there's a lot more conversation around the number of people it takes to make a stage production come together, that it's not just about the artist and the production of the art, that it takes all of the people who are working behind the scenes. And I think that moment for me just harkens back to a time when people were willing to do whatever it took to make sure that a stage production came together, that even though he is the producer of this show, in that moment he needed to be tech. There were so many people running around trying to make sure that the show could still happen, so many people also trying to manage the shifts that are happening in the crowd, Diana Ross doing all that she can to try and manage both, and kind of stage direct. Because I love that in those moments where we're seeing the show have to shift, like Diana Ross is stage directing while still performing. She's giving the band cues. She's telling them what she'll need next. She's trying to control the crowd. And so they're doing all this in real time. And it just felt like such tremendous appreciation for the effort that Diana Ross was putting in for her producer to come up on stage and make that physical contact with her and help like get her situated, get her laced in. It just felt really intimate in a way that I'm always tied to when it comes to Diana Ross, that I think she brings that intimacy and that humility out of people because it's such an extension of how she relates to situations and how she performs.
Listeners who have not had the benefit, and you can catch little pieces here and there. People have kind of carved it up on YouTube so that nobody swoops in and removes it all. But it is hard to find, you can also rent it on Amazon. So there's a chance for you to see it, yes, or buy it. So Barry Diller, soaking wet, has to come on stage a couple of times because she's not hooked up. She does not have any audio connected to anybody. She is calling the shots. Mm-hmm. And we see men call the shots every single Sunday throughout football season. And we don't think anything of it because they're men and they're quarterbacks. She was she owned that stage. You could just tell every time she sort of looked away and she's looking at the orchestra or whatever, she knows exactly what she needs, to your point. She knows what she needs. She's communicating what she needs. In some cases, I'm guessing they anticipated her needs. They probably had walked and talked through this 100 times. And Steve Binder's commentary about the camera shots and everything. She knew exactly which camera was on. And she looks straight into that camera and she is giving it her absolute all. But she really is processing in so many, probably across 5 or 6 different dashboard items, what she needs to be doing while singing these songs that she has sung 10,000 times and doing that Mae West patter that honestly, I just find that so funny because it is so corny and it is so clean, but not, it's kind of playful and everything.
It is,
She's giving grief to the police officers down. I mean, there is stuff that goes on in this concert that could not happen today, which is, again, what else makes it just this tremendous feat is this woman represents literally, the years where Jim Crow laws were still preventing her from going in certain doors in certain states, buildings. And 1983, where she's one of the world's most significant performers. And now you watch it in 2021 and you're like, why don't we talk about this? Because this was
true. Yeah, no, it's definitely a significant part of what we're watching that I don't think it's talked about very much, that there's some clear political activism that's happening within that frame because it's Central Park in Manhattan. It's Diana Ross performing. It's a predominantly Black crowd, Black and Hispanic, or it's a largely a crowd of people of color. Yeah, it's a very diverse crowd, but largely people of color. And knowing that Diana Ross traveled through the Jim Crow South to perform, the fact that she has had to deal with segregation laws throughout her career with the Supremes and onward, she recognizes the danger in that situation and what this could turn into. And I think, especially because of the fact that she wanted to do the concert as a benefit to build a playground in Central Park that she was hoping to take her daughters to. And so the fact that the concert has this other element that would have been really ruined if anything traumatic happened in that particular scene, the good work that she was trying to do would have been completely overshadowed if violence had broken out. And the fact that she manages to quell it by her connection to the crowd, but also this light banter that she establishes with the police, where you can see that it kind of even lightens their physical gesture of like, okay, it's Diana Ross has this, like she has this under control. And the immense trust that she's able to build between herself and that incredibly complicated situation. The way that she maneuvers through it is completely masterful, and really, I think, such a lesson for what sometimes activism looks like on the surface. Because I think people could totally miss the ways that is that the concert is a real like political triumph as well, for the fact that it didn't turn into something that we now record in history as something more dangerous.
She does say, it's taken me an entire lifetime to get here. I'm not going anywhere.
I love that.
Yeah. And then I thought this was going to be a little love shower.
Yeah.
And everything. Well, yeah. I mean, Well, how did you feel when she said that? Because I totally get that.
Yep. Yep. Particularly as a woman, what it means for her to be in that position, and the fact that she is not going to relinquish it easily. She's not just going to resign. She's not going to throw in the towel. She's not going to be defeatist about, because all the obstacles that she had to experience previously were far worse than a little bit of rain. She's like, a little bit of rain is not going to stop me.
Right.
And it's so beautiful because, again, it's another one of those testimonies to her audience. I'm sorry, her honesty. I love the audience's response. They just start clapping and cheering because they know exactly what she means, if not for watching her all these years, from also just understanding what that means inside of themselves, that when you hit that point where you have something incredible happen that you've always dreamed of, when it's been hard to get there, you're not willing to let it go super easy.
Yeah. And a thought too about the previous thing that you noted with regard to the police presence in Central Park at the time. I have to believe that she knew that the only way she was going to get those police to follow her lead, that she understood this audience, was to continue to be playful with them. And at some point, she kind of had to say, you over there, this isn't working the way it's supposed to be working. And so she was very cognizant of what was going on. And again, listeners, this is even more fantastic when you watch the video, that you can see the audience, you see the cops, you see this tremendous expanse. And she is managing all of this with no earpiece or direction from anybody else.
And the cutaway scenes where you see the crowd starting to panic, because it's not a small thing that she's quelling. Like, people are really starting to panic. They really are on the brink of disaster. That sense of when people start to get scared, you can see it happening in pockets. And there's points where she almost breaks character, like the point where she yells out, "Don't push," but she's still in that kind of Mae West wheelhouse. But you can see that she's recognizing that there's going to need to be like a little bit more force, a little bit more action devoted to how much energy she's putting into making sure this crowd stays under control. And that the police stay under control. But
it's the storm continues on. The whole, how long she performed as it continued to get darker and rain is what probably nobody really knows, because this video was trimmed a little bit. It had to have been. But it is pitch dark. She is down to 3 microphones. Hers, which she goes from a cord microphone to a cordless one. Yeah. The keyboard has a microphone and the drums have a microphone. They disconnected everybody else who was down in the orchestra, and it was a full band down there. There had been a tremendous number of spotlights that were on structures out in the audience, and that was brought down to 2. And those people who were working in those those metal structures, scaffolding in the middle of this, were tied to a whole lot of electricity. Had anything happened, all of those police would have had to go from crowd control and Diana Ross to a disaster.
Complete disaster.
When Barry Diller is whispering in her ear, giving her instructions of what the police want her to do, she held off incorporating that for as long as, and you can just tell it gets a little bit more serious. And then finally she says, "Hey, everybody," and this is the great part. This is when you're Diana Ross and you have read all the documents that are in this contract. You know exactly what's in there because you probably negotiated it, and you probably knew that the city of New York was going to have to come back the very next day, and they were going to have to clean out a whole lot of standing water. But she promises the crowd she'll be back tomorrow.
Yep. Oh. And does, and then finishes it, which, it's such a beautiful story. It's so underlooked. I feel like we do not talk about this story enough in Herstory.
No, we don't. I liken it to Judy Garland pulling an audible in late 1963, early 1964, when she did the Battle Hymn of the Republic on her show, when the CBS executives didn't want her to. And man, you watch that on YouTube and you can just tell she's most of the way through, and all of a sudden she gets this smile on her face of like, I stuck it. I did this. I did this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm grateful for this conversation, because when you are able to communicate about something that's exuberant, that really has so much meaning and depth to it, you're spreading joy. I think we're spreading joy just talking about it. I would like to think that we're making people go to Amazon, which I don't like to do, to direct people to Amazon, but because this is so important. And I don't know how it would ever translate to somebody watching it, that they are going to become a better person or a better woman or a better leader.
No, I can't think of a single other concert that I've ever watched. And I love concerts. I love live music, but I've never watched another concert where I think about it in the replay and I think I was changed politically by watching this. Like I was changed in terms of who I thought I could be as a girl. I was changed in terms of who I thought I could be now as a Black woman. There's just such a clear sense of what Diana Ross offers us, not just as an icon, but really as an image of what women can aspire to, like what we can ask for in our careers and in our lives. And it's like, you don't have to be able to go out on stage and be Diana Ross to achieve that. It's that combination of femininity and vulnerability and power that I think in so few instances we're allowed to put together. I feel like, when you put on your 9-to-5 work face, you're always trying to take out any femininity that could be construed as a way for people to take advantage of you, or we're too afraid to be too much of a boss, because then that's another way that we're threatening to people. And then we're too afraid to be too honest, because like that's threatening to people. And so watching Diana Ross put together like this trifecta of things that people typically think of as intimidating when it comes to women, and seeing how if she were not Diana Ross the boss, like how this would have completely fallen apart, how she's absolutely essential and needed in all of who she is in order to accomplish this, just makes me think about us as women and being able to say, we can bring all of who we are to the table. We don't have to dim our light. We don't have to try and fit in by being a little bit less of ourselves, that knowing ourselves super well and knowing what we bring to the table is a real gift. And I feel gifted with that in her performance.
And the two words that come to mind as you were sort of framing that from both your perspective, having watched her and also understanding her career, is authenticity. And maybe she just understood who she was more so because she was blazing this trail. She was this pioneer and nobody expected anything from her. And so she could be herself. And then when the time came that people were going to challenge her, she's like, I've gotten this far. And then the other thing is the preparation, the fact that she knows every detail of everything that's going on in her life. There's cachet, there's status to having people do your things.
Yeah.
And I think she recognizes every time she trusts somebody, there is a chance that it's not going to work out. And she probably had more cases to report on that of her people in the industry.
Yeah, considering how long she's been in the industry, I would not be surprised, or probably would be surprised by how many of those kinds of encounters that she'd had. Because it's still shocking to think of how often women are how often it's attempted to like take advantage of them or slander them in the media. And I think, we've seen a lot of that with Diana Ross and the way that her image has been portrayed, because there's so many conversations about her being difficult. There's so many conversations about her being a diva. Or there's a interview with Barbara Walters in which Barbara Walters asks her about being called the B word, and how Diana Ross turns it around on Barbara Walters as well, and makes it inclusive of kind of like, hey, if we women start using this to separate ourselves from each other when we're both powerful and we're both successful, we're not having the right conversation. We're not looking at the fact that like both of us would be called the B word because we're about our business. We don't let people push us around. We would not be in this state in our careers had we let people take advantage of us. And I love that too, that acknowledgement of throughout her career, people have tried to slander her or take her down for being so powerful and being so intent on making sure that she's taken care of, but taken care of in a, in a different way. Not that I think about like the Marilyn Monroe way, where we lost Marilyn Monroe, where she was constantly adored and on the arms of some man, and, and constantly like loved by audiences, but it destroyed her.
Right.
Whereas Diana Ross created a version of that adoration where she still always was in control of her image and always in control of the people that were in her circle, in a way that she those are, to me, the reasons why she's still here, the reasons why she's still healthy.
I was just going to say, she's healthy. She performs occasionally. I've seen her a couple times in the last few years, and
lucky,
bless her heart, with kind of sensible shoes and a few costume changes. And then her daughter, Rhonda, sometimes does the warm up and everything. Mm-hmm. And it just really is, it's such a heartwarming experience, because it's a little religious, and I just mean this, or a spiritual, I should say, because she really just reaches out, and she continues to talk to the audience as much as anything. She talks about her feelings. She expresses just the love and gratitude for this amazing life that she's had. You see all of that so up close in this video that is now almost 40 years old.
Yeah, no, it's pretty stunning. And I was just thinking about how that spiritual quality, that revival quality, I wonder if it's also like a nod and connection to her family's links to the church in Bessemer, Alabama, where when she was young, she first started singing back when she was going between Alabama and Michigan, in her early days, bringing some of that light and some of that gratitude into all of her work has always also been a part of what I see in her performances.
Yeah. And talking a little bit more about how she has come to sort of protect her reputation. She protects all of the information around her and chooses what she's going to do and when she's going to do it. She's 75 years old. She played Billie Holiday, but in order to play Billie Holiday in 1975 or whenever that was, she had to really get into that without as not a trained as not a trained actor. So, and probably really wrestle with the challenges that Billie Holiday had to take on, and then to step into the shoes of Judy Garland.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, those are I'm sorry, listeners.
The Wiz. No, I got where you were going.
The Wiz, yes.
With Judy Garland's version of The Wizard of Oz, but then her doing the adaptation of The Wiz, and
and then Diana and Elizabeth Taylor both had close relationships with Michael Jackson, and I think that was those were protective relationships.
Yeah.
There is I think that there is a sisterhood of sorts in the entertainment world, where people will do their best to take care of other people or be available should there need to be assistance, that we don't have any idea what that might look like. But I think that probably Diana gets more calls than we have any idea.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh. Listeners, if in fact this whole interview sounds a little different, it's because we have eye contact. So Shayla and I are having this conversation, whereas in the past, even when I've recorded on Zoom, like with Katie McLean, it has been without video. And so you speak differently, because it's like you're on a telephone call than when you can see somebody. But this has been a huge amount of fun. And I just want to say that this summer I watched Summer of Soul, and the film that was all about the Harlem concert series that went on in 1969. Diana was not part of that for probably 105 good reasons. But Gladys Knight was, Nina Simone, a number of names that you actually talk about in your book. Did you get a chance to see Summer of Soul?
I haven't finished it yet. I started it and I still need to finish it. So on my to-do list.
It is heartwarming to think that there is video sitting around literally in people's attics, that is ready to be processed and the story told. And so the work that you're doing in helping students understand how to storytell in ways that in non-traditional formats includes script writing.
Absolutely. And storytelling, I think, is still the thing that is going to keep taking us into the future. it's one of the most important skills I could possibly translate to younger people because they live in a world that is constructed largely of stories. The social media world is all about the things that Diana Ross had managed to put together so well, like how to become your own one-stop business. How do you become your own content creator? How do you control and manage your brand, since there's an expectation now that each of us as individuals are brands. And for me, going into archives and looking at the people who were already thinking about those things before it became important for each person to think of themselves as an entity in that way has been a really remarkable experience for me as a creator. And I love bringing that to students as well. The idea that we can go into the past, we can look at these VHS videos, we can look at these archives, and we can find something new. And definitely we can learn so much about how to tell a story by looking at the stories that have been so well crafted in the past.
The information is there. And if you're interested, sometimes you are the one actually telling the story that's never been told because you spent the time putting together the clues. It's a little detective.
You can discover. Yeah, it is. It is very Harriet the Spy. A book I loved when I was growing up. Yep.
Well, and so as you are teaching this fall and this year, do you have any other projects going on, you busy lady, Shayla Lawson?
Yeah, I write a pretty consistent column for Bustle in which I deal with dating and politics and personalities, being a rule breaker as a woman. I am also working on some new book projects that I'm excited to hopefully get in the world, and working on some other ways to adapt This Is Major, the last essay collection that I brought into the world as well. So keeping busy, trying to stay on my Diana Ross game as much as I possibly can.
Excellent. Wearing masks when appropriate, all of it.
Wearing masks when appropriate. Yep.
All right. Well, it has, and lastly, how would a listener of this episode get a hold of you or your book? Is This Is Major available everywhere?
Yeah, This Is Major is available from any online bookshop that you could order from. I suggest, we mentioned Amazon earlier, so that's a possibility, but I would also suggest checking in with your local indies and seeing if they can order a copy for you.
Absolutely.
And then it's easiest to find me either through my website, which is shaylalawson.com, or on social. My handle is @BlueIfIWasn't on both Twitter and Instagram.
All right. Folks, shaylalawson.com is how you can learn more about her. And if you want to interview her for your podcast, she might just come on. So, Shayla, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Listeners, thanks for spending a little time today with me and Shayla. Remember to grab a copy of Shayla Lawson's This Is Major, Notes on Diana Ross, Dark Girls, and Being Dope. It was published in 2020 by Harper Perennial. It was a nominee for the National Book Critics Circle Award in the category of autobiography, and it was also a nominee for the Goodreads Choice Award. Wow! Now, if you're looking for the 1983 concert in physical format, I wish you good luck. The DVD was distributed by Shout Factory about 7 years ago and has been discontinued. You can, however, find it on streaming Amazon Prime Video. Many thanks to Catherine Yang for audio and graphic production and editing, and to Jazzer, the talent behind our podcast's jingle, Take Me Higher, which I found at freemusicarchive.org. We produce this podcast with no advertising. Find Advanced TV Herstory on most podcast apps, YouTube, Spotify, and Pandora, and head to tvherstory.com for ways to connect, follow this independent podcast, and even subscribe to our monthly e-newsletter. We promise not to share your information. Most importantly, a special thank you to Shayla Lawson for sharing her thoughts on Diana's true triumph of spirit and soul. I do love this story, and this is why I podcast. I'm your host, Cynthia Bemis Abrams.